What does Los Angeles mean to me? I've always thought that LA is a place where dreams come true.
Los Angeles is like an amazing city.
It's not just a tourist destination for me, it's also home.
Hi, I'm Sophie Janinet, and you're listening to LA Portraits. In today's episode, we're heading west to meet with Bob.
Oh, hey!
Hello!
You got it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Bob recently retired from being a school director. Now, I want you to close your eyes and picture Dumbledore. No, just kidding. Although both of them are quite wise. But today, we are not heading to Hogwarts, but to Santa Monica. Even though Bob has been living here for a while now, there is still something in his voice when he talks about the beach. A genuine sense of wonder.
And look at that view. It's just so incredible. The mountains are rising out of the sea, and reaching their peak just behind the Ferris wheel on the Santa Monica Pier there in the distance. And then you've got people on the volleyball courts here playing volleyball. Hundreds of people walking, jogging, walking their dogs. Lots of people on bikes or skateboards, skating by, enjoying that. And a few people on the beach because it's a lucky day in Santa Monica in November where it's in the 70s, right? So how amazing is that?
When I asked Bob to take me to a place that is meaningful to him, we headed to a bridge underneath of which are two murals facing each other on each side of a road.
But the amazing thing are these two incredible murals that are here in Santa Monica that have been here since I moved here in 1983, and they've been here much longer than that. So this first one that we're looking at, it's a mural and you see horses running along the beach.
While he was describing them to me, I admit I failed to admire them at first. But as I listened closely to his words, I started to wonder if maybe there were more than beautiful images on a wall to him, but rather a powerful symbol of freedom.
I hadn't thought about it till you said that. You look at those two murals, you see the horses running along the beach, escaping from the carousel. You see these whales and dolphins, swimming freely through the ocean. It does represent a certain amount of freedom.
These murals are memories. Bob saw them every morning on his way to work when he started over 30 years ago. Thanks to this particular job and this particular place, he felt the freedom to fully be himself, probably for the first time in his life.
There's a book that I read as a young 20-something called The Best Little Boy in the World. And it was a book about gay boys like me growing up at a time in the 60s and 70s where we were aware of being gay, but we were, so ashamed of it because we weren't aware of anyone else being gay. So the way we compensated for that was to be the best little boy in the world, to get the best grades and be the boy that did everything that his parents wanted him to do, and that's how we survived. And that was certainly true for me. I mean, that was my survival was, okay, I'm going to do as well as I can in school. I'm going to focus on my studies and just,
At the time Bob was a perfect little boy, he was still in Pennsylvania. He grew up in Chester, a suburb of Philadelphia, and one of the poorest cities in the United States at the time. He lived with his parents and 5 siblings in what is called the housing projects. In case you have not heard the term before, the project is a government program started in the late 30s to provide affordable housing for low-income families.
So, my father was an alcoholic. There's lots of fighting in the home. We didn't have very much of anything. We were not a close family, and I think because of a lot of the struggles and even trauma that we all experienced, we didn't share a lot with each other, and we really kind of kept to ourselves. So each of us retreated into our own worlds, whatever that world might have been. School was a big escape for me.
Although school felt like the best option to escape, it does not mean it was always easy for Bob there.
So I went to this Catholic elementary school, and then my parents then moved at the end of when I was in 8th grade, and so I transferred to a public junior high and then high school. which was, again, not very good. It was a lower middle class suburban school district. But that's the point at which you're in classes that are a little bit more advanced. So you're in classes with kids more like you, right? And many of my friends were friends who were also doing well in school as well. That's who I kind of hung around with through high school. So where I got the teasing and the bullying and the was, I was perceived to be gay, even at 14, 15. I was called faggot a lot all through high school, pushed around a lot by the bullies. I was small, I was skinny, wasn't very athletic. I didn't even know if I was gay. I didn't know what gay was really, but that was back then. I realize now, if you were considered a weak, male, you were called a faggot.
Fortunately, school was not Bob's only escape. He also had books. And of course, just like us today, he had Hollywood.
Being of a certain age, I was, growing up in the 60s and early 70s. And I remember so vividly TV shows and movies that were filmed in Southern California and in Los Angeles. And I remember, even though I was, 9, 10, 11, thinking, oh gosh, one day I want to live there. And I remember as a teen or a preteen, there was a record. This is back when we had records. There was an old 45 by an artist named Leslie Gore called what was it called? Called California Nights. And I would play that record over and over and over again, just kind of daydreaming about what it must be like to live in California.
California was just a dream at the time. And even when Bob successfully finished high school, it was still a distant one he couldn't afford. Still, his good grades and determination got him a full grant to go to Penn State Public University.
Penn State was both an incredible experience because it opened my eyes to the world, but it was also a very stifling experience too. Again, so I'm now, 19, 20. I'm now very aware that I'm probably gay, and I'm in one of the sort of most homophobic universities at the time. There was a student union building, I remember, where all the student clubs had offices, and there was a gay rights organization there. They were called, it was a funny name, they were called Homophiles of Penn State, HOPS. Okay, they had a law office, and no one walked by that office. You would do everything you could to avoid walking past that office, right? That was the thing that was just in the gestalt of campus. You didn't walk by that office in 1977. And HOPS used to sponsor every spring a day called Gay Blue Jeans Day, that if you support gay rights, wear your blue jeans that day. And on a campus of 32,000 people, on that day, you barely saw any blue jeans on that day.
So Bob did what he best knew. He focused on studying. Although his first choice was architecture, he realized after a few months that it wasn't really for him. So he dropped out and took a moment to think about the next step.
And after about 6 months or so, I thought, okay, I want to become a teacher. And I wanted to become a teacher because school was miserable for me. I had a couple of great teachers, Miss Riley being one of them, but otherwise it was not a great experience. And so I thought, well, I want to become a teacher to make schools better for kids. And so I remember meeting with my advisor, and I told him, okay, I know what I want to do. I want to become a teacher. And he said, that's great. What do you want to teach? I said, I want to teach high school. I think I want to be in a high school environment. And he said, okay, well, what subject? And I said, I love English. I would love to teach English. And he said to me, you can do that if you want to, but I got to tell you, there are, 4 times as many English teachers out there than there are jobs, and you will have trouble finding a job. And he said, is there any other subject you're good at? I said, I'm also really good in math. He said, if you become a math teacher, you'll be able to get a job anywhere you want.
Whether he fully realized it or not, this idea of being able to find work anywhere took Bob one step closer to his Californian dream. He had never stopped thinking about LA. and he planned his first trip there the first chance he got.
My senior year in college, I had a friend, not a close friend, who was looking for someone to help her drive her car back to St. Louis. She was from St. Louis, and I'd never been to St. Louis. I mean, other than Penn State, I'd never been more than 200 miles away from my home. And I said, oh yeah, I'll do that. It'd be fun. Go to St. Louis, help you drive to St. Louis, get to see a city. And I remember, thinking about St. Louis, that's probably almost halfway to California, What could I do during break? I'm going to be at her house for a couple of days. And I had never flown before, never been on a plane, didn't have any money, but I bought a $99 15-day bus pass where you could travel anywhere in the U.S. for 15 days for $99. So I thought, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll go with her to St. Louis, and then I'll take a bus from St. Louis to Los Angeles so I can kind of finally see Southern California. And that's what I did. And the funny thing about it is, no internet. Obviously, it was a long time ago, and I had no money, so I didn't know where to stay. And I needed something very, very inexpensive to stay, but I wanted to stay by the beach. And I knew about Pacific Coast Highway from, again, movies and TV shows. So I found a little motel, and the town it was in had beach in the name. I thought it must be great, and it's on PCH. I'll tell you, it sounds perfect. But the town was Long Beach. And if you know Pacific Coast Highway in Long Beach, it's a very industrial part of Long Beach. I think there was an oil refinery right down the street from where I was staying. It was not the California, I had pictured. So I rented a car and I drove to this little motel in Long Beach. I thought, oh my God. So then I got out my map. I said, okay, where else can I go? And then I saw Manhattan Beach. And that's really, on the water. So I got on my rental car and I drove to Manhattan Beach. And I got out and I took a deep breath and I thought, this is it. I was standing on the beach. I remember looking up the coast, seeing the mountains coming out from the sea, seeing this beautiful beach. People were roller skating, on the boardwalk. So I immediately rented some roller skates and went roller skating there. And I just thought, this is the dream. This is it. I've got to find a way to come back here.
That didn't happen overnight, though. In fact, Bob's first teaching position was in wealthy Westport in Connecticut.
So here's this kid from Chester, one of the poorest cities in America, who gets a teaching job in Westport, Connecticut. And so that opened my eyes to a whole world that I knew nothing about in terms of wealth and privilege. They were very, very kind to me. I think they were really well aware that I was a little shell-shocked, in this town. And after 3 years, that's the point at which you get tenure as a teacher. And in the public school system, when you get tenure, it usually means you're going to spend the rest of your life there. So then I thought, well, if I'm going to stay here, I don't want to have to hide, Is it going to be okay if people find out that I'm gay? So now this is 1982, 83. I was 24, 25, right? So I was trying to get up the courage to talk to the maths department chair, great guy, really wonderful guy, to let him know that I was gay. But I was still nervous about it. I thought, what if I do? And, how will it change things? And I remember as I was going through all this in my mind, I read an article in the Fairfield News, a local newspaper in Fairfield County, about a guidance counselor in the next school district who was fired when they found out that she was a lesbian. And I read that article and I thought, I can't risk this. I can't risk losing my job. If I tell them, what if they fire me? Right? There was no protection for gay people then. So fortunately for me, one of my roommates in college, my former roommates in college, he and his wife moved out to LA because he wanted to be a screenwriter. So they'd been out here for a couple of years, and they were the first people actually I came out to right after college. And so Mary and Jim said to me, they said, you know what, you should come out here. It's a much more progressive city. There's a big thriving gay community here. We're sure you'll be able to find a job teaching here. And, you won't have to hide. So instead of telling my math department chair that I was gay, couple weeks later, I went in to tell him I was resigning and finally going to move to LA.
That summer, Bob put everything he owned in his little car. That didn't have air conditioning, of course. And in July 1983, no GPS either. Crossing the entire country from east to west, he drove by himself from one motel to another in the burning heat of summer. Less than a week later, he made it to San Francisco. There, his friend James was waiting for him, and together they drove down to Los Angeles, finally.
I had no place to live. I had $500 to my name. So this friend of theirs allowed me to sleep on their dining room floor. He put up a little curtain, put a little mattress in there, and so I slept there for a month while I looked for a teaching job.
Then started a few months of frustrating and non-conclusive attempts to join the public school department, followed by a short 1-year experience in an Orthodox school for boys. Until one day, Bob saw an ad for a math teacher position in a private school in Santa Monica called Crossroads.
So I come into my interview at the school that certainly didn't look like a school. It was a bunch of old industrial buildings that had been converted into classroom buildings. And I came in for my interview. It was for a middle school teaching position with a guy named Steve Morgan, who I could tell right away was gay. And I learned very quickly that he was one of the most beloved educators in the school. And I remember thinking, wow, this may be a place where it'll be okay for me to be who I am.
At the time, Bob had already started volunteering at the Gay and Lesbian Center of Los Angeles. He was counseling men about this scary disease nobody understood called AIDS. And despite having found a job in Santa Monica, he kept on going back and forth to downtown LA twice a week to help. But he soon realized one job was not going to be enough.
Teaching salaries, are better, but still not where they should be. But back then they were pretty low, and certainly not enough to be able to afford to live in Los Angeles. And that's the one thing I think, so many of us don't realize this, until we get here, is the cost of living here is just so high, particularly just housing alone, even back then, and it's so much worse now. So in order to live here and just be able to make ends meet, this was not about having a lavish lifestyle, it was just be able to make ends meet with my Datsun 210. I was a bookkeeper, and I did some tutoring.
Somehow, even while volunteering and working 3 jobs, Bob still made the time to really get involved with the team at Crossroads. Progressively, he felt more and more comfortable there.
But then there was a really remarkable thing that happened. And this was kind of when I knew this would be my home. It was, I think, 4 years, maybe 88, 89, when I was there. And we had, one of the things that sets Crossroads apart from many other schools is we have a tremendous human development program. A series of courses called Life Skills, where kids once a week sit in a circle just to talk about what's going on for them in their lives, moderated by a teacher, and sharing with each other and listening to each other and supporting each other. And it's an amazing, incredible program. And so in the late 80s, I remember the head of the Human Development Department, Shelley Kessler, bringing up in a faculty meeting that she thinks the school needs to start talking about homophobia. No one's talking about it. It's clearly an issue for kids. I'm hearing about, some bullying that's happening, some kids, who are struggling with their sexual orientation and afraid to come out, and we need to address it. And I sat in that meeting kind of stunned. Here was a straight woman who was bringing this up. And the response from the head of the school at the time was absolutely, again, amazing to me, incredible. And he said, I think the first step is that we as a faculty need to educate ourselves. And so we had an in-service day where we brought in some facilitators to really educate the faculty on, what we now call LGBT issues. the other thing that happened around the same time, Steve Morgan, who hired me, head of the middle school, came down with AIDS, and eventually passed away, I think, in 1989. And again, that was another eye-opening experience for me in the school, because this is a time, again, when people got AIDS, they were being kicked out of their homes, kids were being kicked out of school. The entire community embraced him and supported him, and meal trains were set up, and people were staying with him and caring for him. And it was really remarkable and beautiful. And my favorite story of all the stories of 38 years of being at Crossroads was when he was close to dying, and the head of the school knew he wasn't going to be around for much longer. He and the head of the high school went over to see him one day, and the head of high school had this old convertible Rolls Royce, and they said, "Come on, Steve, let's go for a ride. Let's just go drive for." And so they're going for a drive, and then they said to him, "Well, you know what? Why don't we swing by school so you can, take a look at school and stuff?" And so Steve agreed to do it. Well, unbeknownst to him, they'd arranged to have the entire student body and all the faculty standing outside the school. And so he turns the corner, he sees everybody there, and they're all cheering for him, sending him love. He's crying, we're all crying. I mean, it was an amazing day. And they get to the end of the campus, and the head of the school says, "Now look up there." And they had named the middle school after him, and his name was on the building. So when I saw that act of love, that act of caring, that act of compassion, which I'd seen a lot of before, but not in a way that was so big and so public. And again, at a time when it wasn't happening, that told me a lot about this place, this place that was going to be my home and was my home.
These powerful moments allowed Bob to move forward, co-creating one of the first high school gay-straight alliance club in the US in 1991, which didn't go unnoticed and earned him a fellowship of 1 year at Columbia University for a master's program designed for teachers. There, he worked on the first resource manual for school to address gay and lesbian issues ever. He also befriended a like-minded professor, namely Kevin Jennings, the founder of GLSEN, the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. And when Kevin Jennings asked Bob if Crossroads could host the first conference ever held in an American school on LGBTQ issues, Bob did not hesitate for a second. And together with his team, they made it happen.
And there were so many things that happened that day. First of all, it empowered so many people, empowered so many educators to come out in their schools. It empowered them to sort of make some change in their own schools. But we had two amazing speakers that day. One was Sheila Kuehl, who was then a relatively new assembly member in the California State Assembly. She's now a LA County supervisor, and is terming off, I think, in a couple of months. And she was an out, politician, and she gave the keynote that morning. But she really didn't know about what was happening at schools. And she was kind of blown away by what she saw that day, and went back to the state legislature and introduced a bill called the Safe Schools Bill to ensure that schools in California were safe for kids who identified as gay and lesbian.
My opinion is that without Bob, things might have been slightly different. Some parts of this story may as well not have happened, but he is adamant about refusing to take all the credit.
It's not. I never want people to think I did this alone, because I certainly didn't do it alone. That's Shelley Kessler was a pioneer when the head of our school was a pioneer. I mean, and so pioneers beget other pioneers, right? And they inspire other people to become pioneers and to take it to the next step. And yeah.
And of course, Bob also acknowledges that this could have not happened if it was in a different state.
California was certainly way ahead of most other states in this country and most other places in this country on this issue. And it always is. I mean, it's what I love about Los Angeles and California is, that it is so forward thinking. And, it takes a while for the rest of this country, let alone, other parts of the world, to your point, to catch up to that. So I'm really proud of the ways in which California has been a leader, in so many areas. But California's not perfect. So one of the ways in which it's not a leader, and this goes back to one of the reasons why I chose not to teach in the public schools here. California used to have an incredible public school system, one of the best in the country, in the 60s and 70s. And then, as my understanding, there was a Prop 13 that was passed, and I can't remember what year it was, that changed all of the sort of the real estate taxes in California, that essentially cut off a lot of the funding that public schools were getting. And California public schools went from being ranked among the top 2 or 3 in the country, at least based on per pupil spending, to a few years ago being ranked in the bottom 3 in terms of per pupil spending. So California public schools are not where they should be and could be, given sort of the resources of the state and all that we've got. And it kills me to see that, our public schools are struggling the way they are here.
Now, recently retired from Crossroads, Bob is still involved in the life of the school. And he is finding a new balance, enjoying his newfound liberty, all the while considering his options for the next step. But mostly, Bob is marveling at the beauty of the place that for so many reasons, and in so many ways, he has been happy to call home.
Look, I'm not a swimmer. I almost never go into the ocean. And I'm not the kind of person to lie on the sand for 4 hours a day. But actually my favorite part is not just the beach, but it's everything. It's the view, it's the sand, it's the ocean, it's the mountains, it's the sky, it's the sunset. It's all of that, put together. The palm trees even. That's that vista, that view, always not only makes me appreciate where I live and how beautiful it is, but it still doesn't stop taking my breath away.
And that's a wrap of this episode of Portrait of LA. You can share it, send it to your best buddy, your mom, your weird cousin, or your favorite coworker. For questions and comments, head to the LA Portraits Instagram account. Stay tuned, we'll be back.